allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up, approval of agenda and minutes. A motion to approve the agenda from 11/17.
To approve the motion for the agenda. 17. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And is there a motion to approve the minutes from 11/3?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. School committee chairperson comments. I will say I did get to see the girls soccer team play Foxborough a week and a half ago. They crushed them. It was a great match. They played some excellent soccer. On to community comments. Or is there anybody in the room for community comments? Sam, anyone online?
I see no hand raised.
And with that, we can move right into student comments. With that, we have a presentation from the Memorial Elementary student reps.
You might want to leave your notes that you're going to read off of. So tonight, I brought along two third graders and two fourth graders, and our reading specialist, Mrs. Hagan, to share a little bit about the work that the two classrooms have done with our two ELA pilot curriculums, language arts, and they've put on the table examples of their final projects. For the third grade did a paragraph writing about theme, and the fourth grade did animal projects, correct? Correct, with that.
So I'm going to give you a quick overview of the two curriculums that we field tested, and then we'll break into some discussion with our students. So we tested out the American Reading Company, which builds knowledge across 4 units throughout the school year. Students dig deeply into science content like marine life, social studies content like United States, and literature content like traditional tales. Students read, write, research, and analyze these topics through the course of each unit. They learn new information, develop vocabulary, and build expertise in a wide variety of disciplines. That's what our fourth graders tried out these past couple months. The other one that we're trying out is the Core Knowledge Language Arts, which is CKLA. This is a comprehensive language arts program that combines systematic foundational skills with a content-rich approach to building knowledge in science, social studies, and the arts. It features 2 main components: a skills strand focusing on phonics and word recognition, and a knowledge strand that builds through rich read-alouds, and it's integrated with reading to learn and learning to write. And so without further ado, let's introduce our panel.
My name is Wyatt, and I'm a 3rd grader in Miss Eby's class. My name is Polly, and I'm a 3rd grader in Mrs. Eby's class. My name is Val, and I'm a 4th grader in Miss Black's class. My name is Addie, and I'm a 4th grader in Miss Black's class.
So what's one thing that's different in your ELA classes this year that you like?
We do more writing, since we're writing a book, and I like to write. I like all the different stories that we read. There were some classic stories like The Wind in the Willows. I like that we got to write a book and that we got to choose what animals we wanted to write about. There's more fiction stories this year, and I like to read things that are more fantasy, so I like that.
And as you worked on your final project or writing assignment, what portrait of a learner quality did you have to rely on the most?
Inspired innovator. I had to think about what to write and be creative. Active communicator, because we had to write a book about an animal in a way that others could understand. Effective communicator, because I had to include a lot of facts, but I had to write it in a way that kept people's attention. Mindful learner, because we learned a lot about animals and classic stories, and so we had to keep working on putting in information and revising our work as we learned. The 3rd graders in my class are using the resource CKLA. In our first unit, we learned about theme. For this writing assignment, we first had to figure out themes that were in the story. Then we had to choose a character that we thought represented one of the themes to write about. The copies that you have are a final draft of our writing assignments. Fourth grade students in our class are using the resource ARC. We learned all about animal adaptations throughout the unit. We had to write about the adaptations that our chosen animal had for survival. Big focus of our writing was making sure that we explain our evidence thoroughly. We spent a lot of time section by section doing research and expanding on our facts that we found. We used a lot of writing tools to help us with this project, including a lot of graphic organizers. The book you have on your table are our final drafts. Thank you for having us. Do you have any questions for us?
Great. Have any of you read the Harry Potter series? My kids love Harry Potter. We are on the third time through Harry Potter. Any questions?
These are really good. It's good work here. Did anybody read these books to their siblings?
We haven't brought them home yet.
Okay. Next up.
The fourth graders, can you share one of your favorite facts about the animal that you researched?
I learned that an elephant on its trunk it has like fingers. And I learned that a penguin it it has five, I think it was, layers like to keep it warm from like the cold. And also an emperor penguin and a king penguin are the biggest penguins, and the smallest penguin is a fairy penguin, which is also called a little.
For the third graders, you want to tell us your favorite story that you read during this unit?
My favorite story that I read was the one in the willows. Yeah, I also like the one in the willows.
Very good.
Thanks, guys. With that, the school committee student rep.
All right, so today, Ninook was fortunate to welcome the town clerk. They brought in their copy of the Declaration of Independence. And it was definitely an exciting experience for everyone, especially the US history classes, because that's like a great way to connect with a different learning. And then on November 7th, members of the DECA cabinet got to go to the state house to hear speeches from legislators who spoke about current bills designed to improve education across the state. There's definitely an informative and overall great experience involved.
All right, and then just an hour ago, the Nipmuc girls varsity soccer team won against Norwell 1-0 in the semifinals, so that's securing their spot in the state finals on Friday. I'm pretty sure it's going to be against Medfield, so it's going to be the same game as last year against Medfield. So that's going to be a very exciting game. Next, the senior decisions Instagram has officially started this past weekend, so I'm running it, and so make sure to follow at Nipmuc26 Decisions on Instagram. We already have 5 seniors posted that they're committed to college. So if you want to see where everyone's attending, check that out. This past Saturday, the class of 2026, we hosted our vendor fair, and it was a huge success. I want to thank all the community members that came out and the vendors. And then one notable thing that I want to bring up is that through the Best Buddies food collection drive, they were able to donate so much food that they were able to fill the entire shed at the United Parish. So that was great. Thank you to all the community members who donated for that. And then just 2 weeks ago, we had about 35 seniors receive the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship for their performance on MCAS. So all they need to do is get about top 25% in their combined MCAS score. So I'm pretty sure it was about 30-ish seniors. I didn't get an exact count, but there were a good number of seniors there. And then Finally, fast preparations are underway as student council and class officers have been preparing for the day, build the school spirit and competition. And so Turkey, a teacher began today in the school where every student can buy feathers for teachers and then put it on their turkey on their door. And essentially the teacher with the most feathers at the end, right before fast, has to wear the infamous turkey costume at best. So yeah,
Awesome. That's a lot of good updates.
yeah.
Great soccer team performance. Glad they're going on.
Yes.
Hopefully Friday can make it to that. And glad to hear, a lot of good donations coming in at the perfect time for families in need. So thanks for the update, guys. Any questions for the student reps? New business, moving on to the transportation contract.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
All right, as we, hi, everybody. In the background notes you saw, we are at the end of our contract for this year. We have an optional 2-year extension that's built into the contract. It's our choice. I met with Neil Telstone, who's the owner of Telstone and Sons. He offered to reduce the pricing on the per bus cost, which will save us money and saves us from having to go out to bid, which the bid process is, I think I've explained in the past, we never get more than one bid. We haven't in 15 years. No other district ever gets more than one bid. They're not going to beat these prices here. I mean, the best they would do is this that we're getting right now, but potentially they would go back to the parts that are in the contract. So I would recommend that we vote this, approve this. So they reduced their prices about 4% this year and about 6% next year from what was in the initial contract. And I think included in there is the original contract as well. But the table that I put together here shows you what the original price was and what they're bringing it down to. So for example, $640 a bus per day, and it goes down to $615 per bus per day. So it should save us about 100,000 or so in FY27, and I think it was almost a couple 100,000 in 28.
Nice. Is it usual that the prices go down on the renewal, or is the first time I've seen?
So in the past, we've gone out to bid after 3 years, the last couple of contracts. Again, they were the only bidder since they already knew what the rates were there. Their bid when they came back was higher. We ended up exercising the extension anyway. He brought it up to me initially that he'd be willing to bring down the price a little bit. And I always like to have prices come down. They escalated quite a bit, I thought, in years 4 and 5, in what was in the original contract. But no, I mean, the cost of busing is going up and going up.
Generally, the cost of everything is going up.
Yes.
So it's nice to see it go down.
I think he's got a little more stability now, and that I don't think he's got as much of a challenge in getting drivers as he was. He just has barely enough, but at least he has enough drivers. The buses are relatively new. I think he told me he just replaced a whole fleet of them. There's some state regulations on what the buses have to do, so they have to kind of comply with some of that as well.
Did they do okay recovering with their turnover and the customer rep Mo?
Yes, so she retired. The new person her name is Crystal Holmes. So far she's been doing a great job.
Good.
And it's a learning experience for her as well. I mean, it's a big bus thing, and I think she's only handling Mendon-Upton. But so far we haven't had any issues that I'm aware of.
Great.
The one thing you'll notice, I've noticed this morning, the pricing you see here, the total doesn't count. There is a piece in the contract for a late bus where we choose to have one. We haven't done a late bus in many years. I am going to talk to him about the possibility, the late bus that we used to run that's in the contract, with one bus that would go just to the center of each town. So like, for example, a bus would leave Nipmuc and one bus would go to the Upton Town Hall, one would go to the Mendon Town Hall. Same thing with Mendon. I don't think there was one at Misco. I think it was only Nipmuc that they ran a late bus in the past. I seem to remember my kids doing it. What did you take when you left school?
It was all one building.
Yeah, that's true.
So yes, Misco had a late
So
bus.
we would like to explore that. There has been some questions about a late bus.
Especially from Misco over the years.
Right now, just one bus going from Misco to the Mendon Town Hall. kind of feel like if the parent can get to the Mendon Town Hall, they could probably drive another mile down the road to Misco, but it would be whether they could do multiple stops, and I don't know what the cost would be for that, so we have to look into that. But that would be outside of this pricing.
Any more discussion on the transportation contract?
Can I ask a question? What are your thoughts on bringing in a late bus?
I think it's a great
I
idea.
mean, financially, we haven't in the past, but just,
My initial thought was there interest, was it sparked by community, and you already said that there was. so.
yeah, I mean, it's not like we've had overwhelming requests, but I would say every year since I've been here, there have been a few people who brought it up, and then also, there are some families that really don't have any access to transportation, so that what that means is, other than our buses, and it means that they're limited to any of the after-school types of activities too, so that's come up as well.
I think it comes down to cost benefit, like, do we need a full-size bus, or do the vans cover what we could do, and we just need someone to drive, like, I don't, without knowing the cost and how many people are interested and how many people we need to move,
Yeah,
it's hard to.
I think the challenge is where, like, the bus is gonna leave the school with some kids, where's it gonna go? And like I said, to take a bus, say from Misco and just go to the Mendon Town Hall or the Upton Town Hall is probably not beneficial. If it could make 5 or 6 stops in various places in the neighborhoods, might be more beneficial. I don't know what that would cost, so we would have to find that out.
Is there a range of cost? Do you have a feeling for the range of costs we're talking
No,
about? here?
I have no clue. You potentially could be looking at as much as this per day for a bus, because you're basically paying for a second, a specific bus. It could be similar to the athletic buses, which is about half this cost. I don't know. I'd have to talk to them and see. I mean, I'd like to explore the option and see what the options are.
Doesn't hurt to inquire.
Right. I mean, I think theoretically you could probably charge for people to take the late bus because it's not to and from school. But I don't know what the benefit is for that as opposed to, I don't know enough about it. Let's put it that way.
So the other thing that comes to mind is there's some unanticipated increases in things like health insurance coming up, so could use some of this money to offset those costs.
That's a tough, I mean, we've always not added it back in to the budget because we're always looking to reduce and to manage it. But then again, it's one of those problems that comes up, questions come up every year, and why don't you do it? And not that all districts do it, but some districts do offer it. So it's always been kind of in the list of those types of things that we would like to be able to add in. So it's a matter of how much would that take and can you do that?
Yeah, I've heard to explore it, and then, if I remember way back in the day, I think it was only 2 days a week. It wasn't every day, but
All right.
and you try to align that with the teachers' extra help days.
Yeah.
and, I can't hurt.
Right.
I'd like to move that we approve the Telstone contract for 2027-2028.
There's a motion to extend the Telstone, approve and extend the transportation contract. By Sean, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Eric, all in favor?
I get it. We're gonna get a printed copy. Jim, you have to sign it. We don't have one. I'll print one. I'll sit in front.
What's in here?
But yeah,
No.
On to superintendent and administrative report.
All right, pretty quick report tonight, just to give a couple highlights. I'm gonna wait for Sam to pull that up. The first highlighted area, we'll be talking about high quality instructional materials, or for those of us who like to use all the letters that we use for everything, that's HQIM. So when we do that, but because it's a mouthful to say high quality instructional materials. Right. But it is important and we do work. You could jump to the next slide. Next slide. Thank you. You just saw an example and I
had forgotten when I knew Memorial was coming, right? And I forgot that they were actually talking. I didn't know what they were going to present on, so I put this in before I learned that they were going to be presenting about the pilot material. So it's perfect timing on their part because they were able to show you some of the impact. And one thing that I've been noticing just in my classroom observations is the impact of some of these higher quality materials that are in the hands of our teachers as they're piloting, and the types of activities and deep thinking that I've seen, and some changes in certain classrooms across K-8 that I'm seeing as a result. But it is decision week. You can ask Cheryl some questions later if you want when you have her up here, but just wanted to highlight that. Our goal was always to have the decision, do the piloting this fall, so that way as we enter into budgeting, we are able to have what those numbers are as we go into the budget. And I really can't thank Cheryl and the team enough for their work in shepherding this whole process through. It is a lot to dwindle, you have a whole list of what you can look at and evaluating them, and then having them down to the core ones that they're going to be reviewing, and then going through that process, seeing presentations by all the vendors, reviewing all the materials, and then piloting, and then all the meetings in between. She's just doing an excellent job with that. So I just want to thank her for that, and the team that's been working with her.
Are they the ones that have piloting the class, the classes that are piloting the programs? Are they gonna continue teaching from that curriculum for the rest of the year? Or are they gonna make a transition back to what we?
That would be something else that we discuss when we meet together, because we want to make sure that it feels right to the educators, and it's kind of dependent on which resource they choose. But there's the possibility that they will be able to continue.
Do they have the material, all of the materials?
They do for one of the two vendors. They have
So-
all of the materials for one of the two
Interesting.
vendors, and they only have some of the materials for the other vendor.
Because typically they might give you just a unit to pilot. They don't give you all of the materials. We'll see if that's who we go with. That would be exciting. That's good to know. I didn't actually know that fact, so that's good, because when we did the last round, when we got to Wonders, you only had just a unit that you would have from all the different vendors that you were able to. So they didn't give you like all of the materials. They did that once with science. We were able to actually keep, right before COVID, all of the science materials that they just let us keep them, which was great. All right, next one. Unless there are more questions on that. No, okay. I was at the MASC conference last week, and I also gave it to you in the background notes this weekend as well, but I wanted to just give a couple highlights from when I was there. And I do have a number of like resources that I can download. I may have shared a couple of like the presentations, but I can talk to you after. There's ones on policies and open meeting and subcommittees. Like there's a lot of school committee workshop ones, but I'm more than happy to just share something with you too. It'll take a while to download, but if there's something you were kind of interested in, I could let you know. But I was on a panel presentation it was called Getting the Message Right in a Crisis. I was there with 5 other superintendents. I was kind of in the middle of this panel, and they just went through and asked what was some recent crisis communications that we had to do. So I shared a couple of samples. And then what have we learned? What would be advice that we would give new superintendents coming into the role? What do we wish that we had learned before entering the superintendency around crisis communications? What are some best practices? And so I think this is the 3rd time I've been asked to be on this panel. It's with our PR group. So they know I always say yes. So they ask. I did it at the New England conference once, and I did it at the Summer Institute for Superintendents, and did this one. This one was the best one, I think, of all the ones that we've done, but that it was a good experience. And I always get a couple takeaways from other people that I say, oh, I didn't think of doing that. I want to add that into what I do. Other highlighted sessions, I went to a MassQ presentation, and it was on AI, classroom, virtual reality tools, some pretty wild stuff Apple has with, it's like not the Oculus, I can't remember the name of it, but
Vision Pro.
is that what it is?
Vision Pro, I think it's what it's called.
Okay, well, I was in Ready Player One. I'm pretty much in that, for those who know the movie or book, but it was pretty wild what you can do with that. Amazing. So they showed a lot of fun tools for us. We had a keynote speaker, Amanda Ripley, I don't know if I've ever shared any resources with you from her, but she's an excellent keynote speaker. She wrote the book, she's a journalist and wrote the book High Conflict. And it came out like a few years ago, and through Leading Now, she's one of the partners with the Leading Now group that I'm in. So I've seen her speak before and was able to take an online course. It's all about how to manage conflict and, you know, how to listen to people, how to talk to people, and how when you have really two opposing views, which we might have in our political environment right now, how to really distinctly listen to the other views and kind of get to curiosity and to work through conflict. And there's just tons of strategies that I've learned, and it was a good reminder. And the majority of the members that were at the conference were school committee members. It was probably like a, you know, because you have one school committee, 3 members with one superintendent, whatever type of thing. So the whole room, they asked like who had read her book or who was familiar, and there weren't very many. So I thought that was really good. I do have some resources that I can share with you. I think I shared a couple links with you, but that was excellent and well received. And I have a feeling they might bring her back for something in the future. Right on the last day, we had a general session. It was related to federal and state fiscal updates. You had representative, he was excellent. I don't remember his name offhand. I could look it up, but he was on the National School Board Association. And I don't know if any of you have ever looked at the resources for school board members for the National School Board Association, but they have a ton of resources there. When I was in a Leading Now session with school board members like last summer, they came in, presented the representatives from that organization. Great. So he was excellent because he gave all the insight into the federal government and bills that are about to go through or not go through and the potential impact on the states. And then on the flip side, you have representatives from the state and talking about the tax impact and talking about kind of the uncertainty in the state budget as a result of the uncertainty in the federal budget. So even though we are in a decent shape at the state level, they may not, you know, I don't want to say handout, it's not a handout. They may not share as much of their funding with local municipalities as a result of wanting to make sure they're dealing with potential catastrophic cuts from the federal government until they know like where that's going to be. So they were talking about with real numbers of impact. Let's say if Title I didn't come through, the hundreds of millions of dollars that would impact Massachusetts alone, as one example. So it was actually a pretty interesting session. And then I went to a panel presentation. I went to this last year as well. Actually, I was the facilitator of this last year, but from my experience in Grafton before, but it was a panel presentation. It was Hudson and Belchertown, and it was about operational overrides that have succeeded and the strategies to help them succeed. That was really interesting. And then I went to a MASS business meeting. It's actually the first time I've been to this business meeting at this conference. And I probably should have been going the last couple of years. It was really informative because they gave legislative updates as well. And there are a couple of things coming out and some like unfunded mandates that I'll bring up in the future that are kind of recent. So we've gotten a couple of legal updates of late that we're trying to address and figure out how to operationalize. So those are just high level, but offline, if you're interested in something, or I can send out more details. I will try to share a few of those PowerPoints with you, which can be helpful with lots of links.
Were there any common themes on the operational override panel presentation?
Yeah, it was having a group, a coalition of people being organized. It was the impact. This was different from previous ones, the impact of social media campaigns. Something that was new was the use of video, because video is such a strong medium now that we didn't have in the past of having short videos. I thought that was a
You
really
started that at the beginning of the year.
I know, I'm trying to put myself although I saw how many people are clicking on my video recently. It's not very many. I only have like 50 views on my video, so I don't know. And 1,000 people open up my newsletter, but we'll have to work on that.
Oh, they're sharing it with other.
Anyways, yeah, they're just sharing it. Well, someone said, isn't it what's in the newsletter? I go, no, I say different things. I tried to make it shorter, but anyways, I guess what they did is, really, I found a big takeaway was information about, everyone said the public do not understand what Prop 2.5 is. They don't understand why, they don't understand how it works, they don't understand how it impacts their taxes. There's a lot of confusion. They said, whatever you can do to build up the capacity and understanding in the community about what that is through videos, through other messaging. That was a huge, I know we know it, but they really emphasized that as well. But yeah, those were some that were different. And then there are some images that I thought were helpful. I'm always looking for a new way to present the budget so it's clear. And there were a few that they shared. I thought, for me, I'm like that. I really love that. Sent it to Jay, said, can we make this, something that looks like this someday? But it was good. But there's tons of emails and like links in there, not emails, but like links to their resources, their web. Have some interesting ideas. And some of them are coming off of having failed in previous years too. And I talked to a number of superintendents, and there were a lot of superintendents in there because there were a lot of communities that don't normally go for an operational overrider. I was talking to a superintendent in Stoneham, and they had it failed last year, and it's coming forward again in December, but they have never had one at all ever. And so it's hard just getting the information out to the community, what it's all about and why, we're in the position that we are across the state. And which leads to that general session. There was a lot of talk about Chapter 70 and the failure of Chapter 70 for rural communities. And also for communities like us that are minimum aid, came up a lot with complaints.
I know you and I have had a good bit of conversation about the potential for a 2.5 override, but also it's nice to hear other communities struggling to explain what Prop 2.5 is. But in addition to that, we have to explain potential override and capital plan allocations from last year, and those are two different things, and
Right.
how those work.
A lot of info to get out there. I'll hire these guys to do my social media. Do that for me. All right, let's keep going. I talked too much on that. Events and meetings, just want to give a couple highlights. And if it's something that's really targeted to our strategic priorities and school priorities or my goals, I'll try to, tag that for you. I didn't do that in the past, but I'll try to do that going forward. We have our parent caregiver teacher conferences coming up, as you probably are all aware. And we had started with student-led conferences in grade 4, and they've rolled that down as one of our action steps in our strategic priorities to grade 3 for this year. So they've been working on that. We have the family literacy night at Memorial. I think Clough already had theirs, but Memorial is this week, and that's part of their school improvement goal. There's breakfast and bingo, backed by popular demand as part of Clough's school improvement goal for engaging with families. And from our strategic priorities, one of our action steps was to bring back CPAC and increase our engagement. And that first meeting is this Wednesday as well. All right, any questions on those?
Parent-led conferences, are we gonna push those into the middle school as well? I mean, not parent, student-led conferences, now that the 3rd and 4th graders are getting experience with that, are they gonna?
We were talking about hoping that we'd be able to at least bring it into at least the 5th grade. With the changing kind of transition with a new principal this year, and there's just a lot of things that are in motion right now. We decided not to bring that up and have it in our action plan for this year. But if we have students now starting in 3rd and 4th, and the goal would hopefully be able to at least bring it to 5th. That is our goal if we're able to do that.
They're much shorter when you hit middle school. So
Yeah.
that would be,
So we'll,
Maybe a lot to think
there are
about.
things to work through with it, but
Yeah.
we believe in it and we're excited about it. And but it, it's different, and it takes a different kind of prep to prep the students for that. It's particularly what's come up in conversations is because it's at the beginning of the year. You're trying to get students ready to kind of talk about their goals and be able to reflect, but it would be easier for them to do that if they had a little bit more time, especially third and fourth graders, to work on those abilities to, be effective communicators and work on those portable learner competencies, which they were talking about earlier today. But it's awesome. They're doing a great job. All right, and then I will always give you some grant updates. We're really excited. We received a hate crime prevention grant for 30,000. We sort of saw this, thought, how could we apply it? Do you think we'd receive it? We need, the police need to sign off on it, where you need to pick a school. And so we chose the middle school, and much to Cheryl's great work, although I was there in the final hours when we were trying to get it in. And then the fact that we got this is pretty amazing. So thank you. But what it's going to do is we're using it to help with paying for some PD and also some materials that, anti-bias kind of materials. What we find is the middle school is a particularly good time to help our students develop these skills through teaching and through, if a student makes a mistake and says something or doesn't quite understand, to be able to have those restorative practices. And we've been looking the last couple of years for additional tools and resources for our counselors and administrators and teachers to be able to support them, and this will support that. We're excited about that. Thank you to her. And then Frank just submitted the timeout improvement grant application. Now it's competitive, so we may not receive it, but if it's awarded, we could receive up to 50,000, and it would be in support of PD for trauma-informed care for elementary school staff. Also more about restorative justice practices for middle school educators. So I was just talking about that, the previous grant as well. And it could also help us design, implement innovative sensory spaces in both schools. We do have one sensory space at Clough that had been developed a little bit, but to have more resources to do more, that would be great. Any questions on that? Hopefully we get that.
When do you expect to hear it?
I don't know if they ever give a date when they're gonna notify us, do they? No, it's always just a surprise. And it's funny because we don't always get notified directly, but then I might get a call. I saw this press release from the governor, you got a grant, and then our vendor will reach out, but we didn't hear it yet, and then we get it. But every once in a while we get directly informed. Eventually we get informed.
They should just show up with a big check.
Yeah, but we just keep applying.
Have you ever found out because you had a deposit from Bessie and accounts tracked down where it came
No,
from?
that doesn't work, yeah.
That's only amended.
Yeah, we don't have that. All right, so that's all I had. Any questions? Anything else? Okay. So, let's see, next up, we have the building committee and capital project report. Just a couple of quick highlights. Okay, Sam, do you mind pulling that one up? Do you mind coming up?
Hi, everybody. Been so long. All right, so a little update on where we are with capital projects as of like Friday and over the weekend. Last Friday, we had a meeting with the mechanical engineers from Civitex, who was the designer for the roof and HVAC project for MSAB. Innovis, which is the company that's doing the energy management systems. Our project manager and Ken and I were at the meeting. Basically, the discussion was, are there incentives to buy different types of HVAC equipment, specifically heat pumps or those types of mechanical things? And is there an advantage to doing that? I think that Innovis would like us to make it what's called a proprietary bid. There's a specific company they're working with that the lead time all fits. Ultimately, I don't think we're going to do that. We're going to specify the type of equipment we want and put it out to bid so that anybody can offer prices as far as bidding. Innovis will help us as far as putting together those specifications so that we get the right specs. Not all of the equipment will be heat pumps. Some of the rooftop stuff does provide heat to their spaces. Some are just for AC. The goal is to get the most energy efficient equipment up there, and it's not necessarily always, is it more expensive now but cheaper in the long run, cheaper now but more expensive to run. It's kind of a balance between the two. So that's the goal there. We're going to try to take advantage of any incentives that exist. And then the other thing that came up was was a list of about a half a dozen things that we had to do in this building for ADA compliance. Most of them have been completed. Ken is doing those. It had to do with some signs at bathrooms that didn't have Braille on them. It had to do with, I guess, at the front door, I never went and looked, but I think there was a space between the concrete and the threshold that we had to caulk and fill. Ken is doing all that stuff. It'll be done by the end of this month. And then we continue to have our weekly meetings with the OPM and the architects. But Beebe and Associates released on Friday sort of an updated project schedule, much more detailed than the one that we had with the little bars. This is a little more detailed. There's somebody new working with us that we've worked with on other projects in the past. They're planning on having schematic designs by the beginning of December. They do this, same thing with the roof and the architect. They do what they call 60% construction documents and then 100% documents. They're hoping to have 60% by January, 100% by February, get the bids out at the beginning of February. The bid period will be between February and March. And then from March on will be construction administration. So we should have bids back. That's their targets right now. Will we meet all of those? I guess we'll find out as we start to work through the project. There's lots of details that still have to be worked out, but they are a little bit more organized, I think, from the architect side as far as the facilities and the fields. One of the things they requested from us is to identify the rooms that need flooring replacement. So we'll have to go through the high school and the middle school. Obviously, the middle school rooms that we already did carpets, and we're not going to put new carpet or new tiling again. They'll stay as they are because they were just done in the last couple of years. They gave us a list of what's called the project directory, which is a list of all the people that are involved in all this stuff. And they also sent us what's called a Revit model. I think that's how you pronounce it. Don't hold me to it, which is sort of a 3D virtual building design. I was not able to open it. You need to have some kind of
I
special
also was
software.
not able to open it.
Sean is nodding his head because he's somewhat familiar with this.
We do not have the Revit
That's all okay.
software.
It's been around for a
We
while.
don't, we don't have that on our computers. so.
And then the other thing that they had asked for when they did the walkthrough is, and I had these, so I brought them in and they're gonna pick them up tomorrow. They wanted to know if we had electronic versions of the drawings for Clough and Memorial. Why I have a set of drawings for Clough and Memorial, I don't know. I was on school committee at the time, but I found an envelope with 2 CDs, one for each school, from the architect from Mount Vernon Group addressed and came to my house. So I brought them in. I'm going to give them to them and they can make copies of them. I'd like to get them back because that's the second time I've been asked for them. So that's sort of where we are with that. The last has to do with some of the finances. The last update, I got in touch with bond counsel and our financial advisors to ask a couple of questions related to what we could use finance funds from the capital projects for. So the first thing we learned, and I had been saying this and I was wrong on this, is that, if we have one project that's under budget or another one that's, say, trending toward the high side, we could sort of share money between them. We cannot do that. The money that was voted for the fields has to go to the fields. The money voted for the roof has to go to the roof, or it doesn't go anywhere. There is a way to transfer those things, but that method is you have to go back to the towns, get a ballot vote, town meeting vote, to approve transferring funds that are left over into the other project, and you can't do that until the project is 100% complete. So that kind of, in my mind, it means it probably isn't going to happen. So we need to try and keep things at the budget levels that they're at. As far as using it for like financial management, we had talked about that a little bit. You can't really do that either. They don't recommend that. If you do, it has to be very specific to the projects with timesheets, and that's all you can do. You can't like mix in, well, I was doing this, but then I did this. So I think that would be a little bit difficult as well. Doesn't mean it can't be done, but I think it's a lot more difficult than initial what we thought. So what I've done is I've gone into the software. I had set up separate accounts for the MSBA part and the HVAC part for the roof. I've now separated it out. So I have a set of accounts for each project, for revenue accounts and expenditure accounts. The initial money we borrowed It was borrowed specific on each of the projects. So today I actually did the journal entries to move the revenue into the correct accounts for each of the projects so that the software will be lined up properly. That's mostly so that it makes it easier on us in the long run. If somebody says, hey, what did you spend on this? I can pull it up a little bit quicker. Quite honestly, I wish I had done it a little bit differently, but that's going to be more difficult. So it's going to work the way it's going to work. And that's about it as of right now. I mean, other than that, we're still, moving along, but it may seem like things are going slowly, but there's a lot of activity behind the scenes.
Couple of questions, Jay. Back on the first slide, what exactly falls into the category of construction administration? Do you know?
So their involvement, once the bids are awarded and you start construction, they play a role. There's going to be lots of questions. I don't know. I'm not going to say that this happens, but my experience is that contractors tend to bid on these jobs and they tend to lowball them as best they can. Then they start picking through the drawings, looking for change orders because they can make money on change orders. So that's where the architect has to come in and say, no, it does say that right here. You just didn't pick it up when you did it. And there's a back and forth there. And that's where the project manager comes in as well, because they want to enforce that stuff. I've had conversations with Jeff D'Amico about this, and same thing with the OPMs on the roof thing. That's their role, part of it, but we play a role in that as well. The contract, I didn't even put it in here. I forgot all about it. The contract with Vertex, I got it back from our attorney, sent it back to Vertex to look at. They're going to get back to me with it. We're hopefully going to get that resolved this week.
Can I ask a question? So when you say construction administration, that's the OPM.
No,
not
the
the
architects
Habib.
as well. Habib as well. They all play a role in that because Habib's got to defend their drawings.
Okay.
The OPM wants to either point out, no, they made a mistake. No, the contractor's trying to charge us for something that was already in the drawing. So it's just, they both play a pretty active role in that.
So that process is also what Cole was saying to the building committee was the approvals that you get from those two entities are essential at being able to approve a change request.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you sort of get everybody's approval, it's common sense, and you can move forward.
I mean, we don't know what's going to, change orders are kind of inevitable in part of the projects. I will say we've worked with the B before. The last project we did, we had one change order, which is rare, and it actually saved us money. But I remember when we did Cluffin Memorial, we had all kinds of change orders saying, they forgot to put air conditioning in the computer lab, or they, things that just get forgotten. And these things happen. So it's just a matter of managing it so that we're not paying exorbitant prices for it. And that's really where the project managers play a role.
Two more questions, Jay. One, I forget what we went to the towns with exactly, but for example, the roof project, that's an MSBA reimbursement.
Yes.
So we'll pay for that and then we'll get that check, but that money in theory is usable or
No,
already
no.
allocated? Okay.
No, so what happens there, it's a reimbursable process and the project manager will do that work for us, which is good because I did it on the last one. And it's not that it's difficult, it's just time consuming. So you get bills, you pay the bills, you send them a copy of the invoice and the copy of the check. They look at it and say, yes, that's eligible for reimbursement. Here's your 52%. They send us a check back, which goes into a revenue account. What that does is when you're all done with the project and you actually do your final borrowing, because we'll do short-term borrowing for the next time until we get through the project. That way you only ultimately borrow what you spent for the project and not any more. The goal is to not end up with any extra money. You can't take this capital money and then use it to, for the retreat in Aruba or something like that.
And then Maureen and I were talking earlier, maybe it was last week, about the auditorium here, and there were some changes suggested by the OPM, or not the auditorium, what's it called? The stage and all of the seating and the
auditorium, yeah.
And the seating and the carpets and moving outwards and stuff, putting update on that stuff.
There hasn't been any. What I did ask Ken to do is one of the questions that came up was the seats that go up the balcony. So those were designed to be like lecture halls.
Yeah, they have
My generation in college, you had lecture halls with 400 kids in a room, right? Probably you guys as well. They don't do that anymore. That's how it was designed. I didn't know that each of those seats has a little table that comes up and folds up on top, like we used to have in college. If those chairs are in good shape, because those aren't used as much, we may not replace them. We might just reupholster them. we may need parts, and the question is, will the parts from the floor seats be adaptable up there? The floor is gonna get all new seats and new carpet, and then they're gonna do carpet up there. So they have to evaluate that, I think.
But I mentioned to him, as they reviewed it, they said, oh, there are outlets in the middle of your floor, which makes no sense.
Well,
Wanting to.
there's a
move them.
reason there's outlets in the floors, because you have a soundboard saying you wanna be able to plug it in here.
No, it was in the middle of the floor. When you come in, it's
Yes.
like when you walk in, it's not where the soundboard is.
Yeah, but they put them in
It's
for that
like-
reason, to plug stuff in. It's a
Yeah.
common thing in auditoriums. It's not rare. I've seen it in just about every
Yeah.
auditorium I've been
So
in.
they suggested, can we have it behind the seats where the soundboard goes?
Right.
That was their recommendation. If you're pulling everything up, could we move that? That's something that came up.
So you'd have to do that, you'd have to jackhammer out some of the concrete and put the wiring in, because you don't want it up, probably, you don't want like conduit on the wall, on the floors. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, we have a really great soundboard in the sound booth upstairs, and that's really where sound should be being driven from. But for the plays, the person that comes in and does sound wants to use his own equipment, so he sets up behind the seats. But it is possible. I
And
mean,
road
that's,
flyers.
yeah.
Any other questions?
All set.
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you.
Jay.
Okay.
Moving on to Department Report. Assistant Superintendent Cheryl.
I'm
Gonna sit over there
here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna banish myself to the green table. I'm
Sure.
sorry, I'm closer to
We'll get
you.
to the podium.
But yeah, I don't wanna stand at the podium, actually, but actually, this is gonna bother me. Is it straight now?
That's better, yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Sam. Hi, everybody. I'm delighted to be with you, about a month early. Usually I'm doing this in December, but, we get to do it before Thanksgiving. And, we have a lot to be thankful for. So I'm gonna share with you our assessment and accountability update, and, I've broken the presentation into 4 main buckets. First, our accountability results from the state. Second, our district MCAS results, so at the district level. Next, we'll shift to the school level, and I'll give you an overview and some highlights and areas of focus for the schools. And then actions for growth we're working on. So here's the accountability results. Our accountability results were good. We are not requiring assistance or intervention. That's one of 2 categories, so that's good. And that is what I would expect. We were awarded moderate progress towards our improvement targets. Actually, 2 of our schools made substantial progress, and 2 of our schools moderate progress, so it was very close to being substantial again. The whole idea of target setting is a criterion referenced part of their accountability metric that is set in a linear fashion. And I share that because that's often not the way things improve, in a straight line. And so I had a conversation with Desi about that about a month ago, and they said, yeah, it's not the best way to do this, but we feel like it's the, most straightforward and fairest. But in this space, I'll try to point out too, that in making substantial progress the last couple of years and moderate progress this year, what's really happening is that we're getting closer and closer to our targets each time. So each school, as I said, made substantial or moderate progress, and every school, and I think this is probably the most important part of accountability, was in the 59th percentile or better, and that's the norm referenced part of it. So it's in comparison to other schools like them across the state. And they don't do the norm reference part for districts because it's just too hard to make that comparison and have equivalent districts. But at the school level, if you're K through 4 or pre-K through 4, you would have the same bucket. So being 59th percentile or better is excellent. And Memorial, I think, was in the 85th percentile or something like that, which was great. Yeah. And there's a link to the accountability page if you're a nerd and you want to dive into it. One of the things that I noted, not that I'm a nerd. One of the things that I noticed is that we met targets for our ELL population almost across the board. And that's really like a source of pride, I think. So, yeah. So anyways, that's something that I just wanted to share. And there are lots of places for growth there too, but. So now we'll go to the district trends. So first I'll take a look at ELA. And I wanted to show the kind of trend over time. And something's up with my knee. The growth, I think, is symbolized here in the difference between the two curves. And one of the things that I think is important about our district ELA over time is that we've been consistently above the state average. But you can see that in the last year, we're starting to like kind of separate from the state average which I think is significant. Our SGP indicates that as well, which is 52.9, which is good. In each of the grades that are tested, our proficiency level is above the state average. I tried to, the graph is kind of hard to see, but you can maybe see the little gray bar here. We have to tell OA to like switch their contrast colors because this is not a good color. But I drew in the little dashed line so you could see where it falls for each of the grades. And then because, excuse me, I'm not well, but I'm going to try to get through this because I think that it tells an important story. I've been trying to give you a cohort analysis, just a small snippet. This is our current 9th graders. And so I tracked them from 5th grade to 8th grade and in it ELA. And you can see that their trajectory in 5th grade, which let me see it so I can. In 5th grade, which was 2022, they were testing a little bit below state average, but in 6th grade, they went above and they're getting further and further above the state average there. So I thought that was pretty positive to share. We're going to switch over to math. In math, again, our SGP was above the mean. And again, you can see over time that we have, that our district scores have consistently outperformed the state. And here we can see that it's not as consistent for the grade level proficiency, but notably, I wanted to point out 3rd, 4th, 6th this year, and 7th, which are grades that have really consistently outperformed the state in the last couple of years. In fact, where we were noted for reaching pre-pandemic levels was particularly because in those grades that our performance pre-pandemic has been surpassed for a couple of years now. And so I think that's really important to share as a community. Where we're not quite making the state average, I think there's interesting information there. And one is, and we'll get more into this in a bit, but in 5th grade, we've been working with our 5th grade team to try to figure out how to apply the high quality instructional materials that they have, which are really designed for an elementary setting where they have more flexibility with their schedule and have greater time on math. And so we started this work last year and we're continuing it this year. You can see some improvements in 5th grade math already. And so I believe that with some additional work, we'll be able to see those scores once they're able to really implement the grade level progressions well. We'll be able to see those scores improve. And in the 8th grade, this was a year where it was a small and unusual class. And I think we ended up having one math teacher, and then we had another teacher who hadn't really taught math before. And so I think in that setting too, it's one data point that is, I believe will be, it'll trend out as we see the 10th grade scores, and we'll get into that in a bit. Before you go, Sam, this last graph, the current trends for the 9th grade cohort, I think, actually is really a great story as well. And so here we see that the proficiency again outperforms the state, and it starts to separate towards 8th grade as well. And I think that, just if I may, I think that's more important than a single snapshot in the year. So this is the snapshot that is the course of a student's journey in math. So here is our trend in science, and we have been consistently way above the state average in science. Our difference is decreasing a little over time, and I think that that's important for us to think about and look at. And we are doing our science curriculum review this year, so I feel like it will be a good time to get heads around the table that are really focused on science to take a look at this and have a conversation about what's our vision for science. And this has also been in a space where the assessments have been altered too. I think that it was in 2023 that a new science assessment was administered for the first time for real. So that's something that we have to kind of look into and address.
Which year was that?
Pardon me?
Which year was that?
I think it was 2023. It could have been 2022. So here we have grade level assessments for science. And in this one, what I did is instead of putting the grade level proficiency down this way, I put the topic, the category basically. And so what you can see is, that on a district level, that we are outperforming in most of the topics in science, or they call them categories. And then I did the same thing for the science for a 9th grader over time, the cohort trajectory. And there's only 2 data points because they're 9th graders, and you only take the science MCAS in 5th grade, 8th grade, and then 10th grade, often, sometimes 9th grade. But that trajectory, I think, shows consistent difference from the state, and the fact that the lines are going down in the same way doesn't give me any type of concern, because that means that we're performing consistently with the state, not that we're dropping. And here's civics, first time for real. I gave you a little prelim last year, but our civics results for the first time that the scores are official. We have outperformed the state pretty consistently. And that is in that display over there. And this one just shows the breakdown of the student population. And these are where we'll need to put some attention below the line. So I'll pause. Do you guys have questions about any of that first bit?
You by any chance have data on previous 9th grade classes, so you get a comparison that way?
Yeah.
So
I don't have it in this presentation, but
understood. But it'd be interesting to see if there's been any change in.
so what you're looking for is like a cohort analysis, a comparative cohort analysis.
Yeah.
Boop.
That gives you a better idea of how students are, how the school is doing every year. Because there's a dramatic change between different classes in the students' interest and the students' focus, and sometimes there's big sets of kids who are, for whatever reason, motivated in different ways. So, and that was a shock to me when sending kids through school. I didn't expect that Justine would have this cohort of kids that are all focused on one area, and almost like a combination of disciplines. And you get Lucy, who's only 2 years later, is completely focused on something else. And maybe it's just my own myopic. And then Izzy was completely different. So it feels to me like, to give an example, it's like the calculus BC students, we didn't have a lot of interest in that. You know, I don't know the details around that, but that shows me a dramatic change in the interest of the students. How do you guys feel about that? So,
I agree, like my Calc BC class, we have 10 kids in the class, and this is the last year it's running, so.
yeah, see, that's a big deal. So I just wondered if that has more to do with you know, it's not necessarily the way we're teaching, but just the interest of the students, what we're trying to provide to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at the cohort analysis year after year is important, although I don't think it would really help explain some of the differences that you are raising right here. And I think that we need to kind of think about different ways of doing that. I think that a cohort analysis will give you a sense of, you know, how a cohort developed over time in relation to the state, right? So that you could like really see, as opposed to just like having what you have sometimes when the displays are like the ones that were over here, is you have just like one grade. Maybe this is what you're talking about, Sean, like one grade, fifth grade, and then you'll see a completely different group of kids for fifth grade the next year and a completely different group of kids for fifth grade. So you can't really, you know, create like how is the fifth grade doing that way, because they are different kids. But with the state comparisons, and that's always why I'm trying to give you a basis of comparison somehow, I think there's valuable data there. So.
Okay.
I agree, and that's one of the things I look at, like the math one here, like this fifth grade, the standard deviation between our kind of average and our top cohort and our bottom cohort is just so large. Is there any kind of reason why, and even when you look at the state for like that fifth grade cohort, we're still below that, like we're, you know, third and fourth grade are way above, and then fifth grade is even below the state average. So it's a very odd,
Yeah.
kind of an anomaly.
Well, and this is one of the reasons why we're focusing on it right now, right? Is because it's, you know, it's one of these things we've been watching over time, and we want to make sure that in the fifth grade, they have access to all of the grade level standards, basically, in math in this particular case. And that has been challenging with the teaming in the past, right? So there was an effort to reconfigure the teams so that they would have more flexibility with their scheduling, which I do think has helped. And you'll see that in the middle school data. And then there's also the ability to implement the curriculum resources in the time that they have. And that is, you know, that takes like some finessing. So we're working with a consultant who can like help us figure out how to like identify the you know, focus, I'll call them, standards, so that we can move all of the students through all of the grade level standards.
And to that point, like one of the things I'd like to see, I mean, it's great to see the ninth grade, but even cohort by cohort over the years, because next year we're going to see a very similar presentation, but you know, making sure that the third and fourth grade cohorts are continuing to track it at that excelling pace year over year, like that's meaningful.
Yeah.
Just the one other thing that I observed here is that in the past, we've had data that showed us that students were either at the state average or just below the state average in middle school. And then you saw a rapid acceleration when they reached ninth grade. And then they ended up in a place that was far ahead of the state's average.
Right.
This is slightly different.
Well,
You can
one of the
see-
reasons why I chose the ninth grade cohort is because I think there is more like, there's a better consistent story to be told within those 4 years. I think when you get to 10th grade, the MCAS actually changes for everyone. It had been the bar to high school diploma until this year, until next
Yeah.
school committee meeting. And because it's, you know, because of that, it, you know, you would see dramatic jumps and things like that. So it had more to do personally with the test, but in the end, it was an assessment of where our students were with proficiency for 10th grade just like it was for everyone. And our students do very well, or did very well when it was that.
That's below state. 10th grade.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Okay, let's keep going.
Before we move on real quickly, one quick question.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna self-identify as a nerd here too, because now I'm deep diving into the accountability website. And just noticing that the only subgroup that didn't make progress towards targets was students with disabilities. So I'm curious to know how we use that to inform what we're doing with that.
Yeah,
Student.
That's great. Well, I don't want to be like a wah, but there are other subgroups that, didn't improve in that metric. That metric is super complex.
Yeah.
And you're right, though, consistently in every category, students with disabilities either weren't making progress or were making minimal progress, or I can't remember how they put it, but I think that is something that we have noticed, right? And it changes year to year because sometimes the target setting doesn't give you the best metric for that. But where we have been watching has been the difference in proficiency and the difference in growth for our students with special needs. We do have some good news on that front, which I'm going to get to, but because we see those, that kind of accountability trend, that makes it more important to do exactly what we're focusing on this year, which is that 5th goal that Maureen
That's why
just
we added the
mentioned.
student
Yeah.
performance goal for the next 2 years to really unpack all of the different things that might be contributing to that, So we're looking at it from lots of different angles.
Awesome. Nerd badge.
Pride.
That's right. Well, I'll wear it with pride. All right, so next slide. So let's talk about the elementary schools. What I wanted to, and this is what I just wanted to show you some different displays, basically. So this shows that kind of like upward trajectory for proficiency, basically, for the elementary schools, for ELA. And this, I didn't put the state line back on this because I would have had to draw the whole line. It was hard to get it looking right. But the state line doesn't go up. The state line kind of curves down a little until this year. So that is important. This is the barometer for this 2019, which is pre-pandemic that we're using for 2019. So we're getting there. I mean, I feel like we're actually doing a really good job with proficiency there at the elementary level. You can see that our growth has been either at the mean or above the mean for the last several years. If you go to the next slide, Sam. And here's a highlight in math. I'll use the math as a highlight. So this is where we see the pre-pandemic proficiency here, and the fact that we have been above proficiency for several years and consistently now. And that graph is the growth. So it's been very much above the state, above the median, the 50th percentile. And Memorial's growth has been over 60 for 4 years in a row, which is kind of off the hook. Elementary highlights, another one is that we can see that our work on our focus on writing seems to be yielding some results. So what I tried to do here is create a display that shows you grade 4. I just chose grade 4 as a sample grade, but grade 4, 25, 24, and 23. So the green is us and the blue is the state. And you can see that in 23, we were below state average in writing, and that was the same in 24. And this year we're above the state average. So you can see that our writing scores are starting to improve at the elementary level, and that's been their focus for the last couple of years. So I thought that was important. And of course, we still have some more work to do. When we look at this is where it gets a little crazy. Yeah, just hang on for a sec. Don't hit play yet, or hit pause for a sec. So one of the things that we note, just to what you were saying, Carrie, is we're trying to look and make sure that the proficiency is growing for all kids. And so
Damn, you're making me dizzy.
Pause button.
All right. So when I point to Sam, he's gonna turn this video on. I don't know how this is gonna go, but this was my attempt to kind of do a little twofer here where I wanted to like talk you through some of how we're using the data and also show you the system a little bit. But I had to kind of record it because there's student data on the side. So I clipped the screen a little bit. So if you start it, I might tell you to pause it. We're looking at fourth grade data here. And this is the percentage correct over time. So I think the cursor's going to go over here now. Oh, awesome. And it's going to show you the categories that we're looking at. And then this is what I really wanted you to see. I wanted you to see that we can drill down to like really look, stop it for a sec. Awesome. No, hold on a sec. Yeah. We can stop it. We can drill down to see how we're doing in these areas. And if you stopped at a point, you might be like, oh, we're doing great. Like, here we are. It's blue. But if you drill down far enough, sometimes you can see the areas where students really struggled. And I think that's a powerful tool. Additionally, and I think this is what it's going to do next, you can look at this and see that we're 5 points above the state in essay right here. But our teachers can also go back up over here and click to, yeah, go ahead. Yep, click to 2024. And you can see that in 2024, we were below the state average. So they have this data right at their fingertips to be able to like say, how did we do compared to last year? I chose to look at reading because you can also see that we're doing really well in reading where the pluses are there. And if you start to drill down into some of the areas, sorry, I was a little crazy with the video. Go ahead, go. Oh, here I drilled down. And then you can pull the prompt right up right there. So you hover over it and the teachers can look at the prompt and be like, oh, this is one of the things that got the kids stumped. So I just thought I'd share that with you. Both elementary schools have really like made it part of their systems to look at this data annually. And I think it's really a part of like what the story of their growth is. And one more thing before we go, but you don't have to go back. You don't have to go back. Also, we're using the filters for student subgroups there. So it will allow us to look at these same analyses and say, how did students with disabilities do? So here's a middle school overview. Looking at the proficiency, I think that it's trending in the right direction for ELA, math, and science in the middle school. And this year, we are above the state average and on average in every subject at the middle school. And one of the highlights at the middle school is that the growth was above 50 for the second year in a row in ELA. And here I wanted to just share, because I think this is like a part of the story of high quality instructional materials. Grade 5, which we have been piloting a different resource in grade 5. And we did that because grade 5 didn't have any resources prior, and they really wanted some. And they're an elementary level. The rest of the elementary schools were working with Wonders. But we ended up bringing in a resource, My Perspectives, and they've been implementing it. And part of the story of high quality instructional materials is that these publishers have organized experts to kind of create these units that really do what takes years for teachers to do, right? Like to really refine how you're building on the standards and how you're going to kind of like, in this case with ELA, loop back to the skills so that the kids are developing the skills over the course of the year. And having these materials, I think, is a really important tool in our teachers' arsenal, right? Because otherwise what ends up happening is that we have like homegrown, I'll call them, programs where the teachers work to address the standards with their own resources. And they do so very well in some cases, but they don't have as many ideas assembled. They don't have the supports for how to like support students in different types of ways broken down. And these publishers really put it together. So you see those green lines for writing. Like one of the reasons why I think we see those green lines for writing is because they have this writing practice embedded in the curriculum resources. And, so I thought that was pretty like substantial growth over the course of 1 year. Middle school highlights too. Math in 6th and 7th grade, as we noted before, it's been, the growth has been tremendous. And you can see when I focus on the data for these 2 grades, that the growth curve is above the mean consistently, and that the performance is going up. I would say too that like typically the 8th grade is very consistent with this. And as I was mentioning before, we're focusing on the 5th grade so that we have the whole story. But one thing that I thought was really important to mention is that for these 2 grades, students with disabilities improved 12% in proficiency since 2022. And that's pretty good. And so that doesn't mean that they are performing at the same level as the other kids, because the other kids have grown too. But the fact that they've improved 12% in effectively 4 years or 3 years, the 4 years of the test, that means it's about like 3% a year, which is part of our target, and we can do it. So here's a way of illustrating an area of focus for the middle school. In the aggregate, our writing scores, even though the 5th grades was above the state average, in the aggregate, our writing scores are still below the state average. We've talked about this a lot at the middle school, and what Anne and Nick and I have talked about this year is really talking about how we can talk about writing across the curriculum and do it in a way where there has been a start already to basically identify where in the curriculum writing is happening all in the middle school. And what I pulled up over here was just from OA. This is a science question that was on the MCAS that basically is a written response. And so in every subject, we have the ability to like embed writing. And you can see in this particular one in science too, our kids were a little bit below the state average. So we feel like if we have a lot to gain by having this kind of communal conversation about writing across the curriculum. And then the other thing that I think we'll be focusing on at the middle school, and partly because we can now, because we're organized in the right way with teaming and with the assessments, is that we're all going to be talking about this district-wide, is the concept of using our formative assessments to identify students that need interventions and provide them in a just-in-time way and cyclically. And one of the things that this is going to require, however, is that we build our assessments a little bit more. We can't just rely on the 3 administrations of iReady. We need writing assessments to be able to gauge how writing is progressing formatively too. So, all right. Yep.
So you're right, you could absolutely, incorporate writing into, outside the ELA stuff. Are the science teachers, for example, evaluating the writing as they're evaluating, questions like that on homework?
Well, and that's exactly where we're going, Matt, is like, we want to make sure that like teachers at the middle school, teachers everywhere, really, right? But it's much easier at the elementary school where the elementary teachers focus on everything.
Right.
But teachers, especially at the secondary level, are saying, yeah, that's part of what I need to do too, right? Is actually work on the development of writing. And I think we have the ability to do this and do like, it can be a really constructive and kind of community building, like, process too, because then the ELA teachers don't feel like, it's all on them, and it's not. We write in all aspects of our lives. All right, so at the high school, we are still outperforming the state in these areas, and there have been some dips in proficiency. And so there's a tiny dip here for ELA, which, and this is interesting too, the growth is pretty good. And it has been consistently good, but the proficiency dips a little. And you might say, well, why is that? What's happening there? How is that even possible? Growth is a metric that is done student by student, and it's a measure of how the student is doing compared to their like peers. And so my belief, and it's really hard to get into this, like, drill down really closely, but my belief is that actually we grew some kids that weren't proficient in ways that were really outstanding, which is good news, right? But what we want ideally is not for it to dip, is that we want it to be like this and still be 58%. And so we're taking a look at the data. We're making sure that each of our departments like identifies what that area of focus can be. And we're trying to do it in a way that will help educators not feel like it's something different than what else they're working on, which is there's quite a lot of exciting stuff happening at the high school. So here in math, we see again consistently over the state average a dip. That's a more substantial dip in math. It's one data point, I want to just say, right? Like, I don't like panic when I see a big dip with a single data point, but it does make me curious. And it makes me curious, especially in light of a 54.9 SGP, which again is a good thing, but we want that proficiency to stay up when we have the growth as well. And then in science, we experienced another dip, and the dip is a similar curve to here. And what I ended up doing, science doesn't have growth because they don't have a year before. So there's no growth metric for science. But what I wanted to show you is that in the different categories of biology, because this is a biology exam, it looks like ecology was the one that kind of brought us below the state average there.
Is that the ninth grade cohort again, or is that 9th and 10th grade?
It's 9th and 10th. Although, and this is something that I talked to Jen and Marianne about, there was a big difference in the test taking population last year. And that's a part of what they say explains the dip in science, because they shifted the science progressions and enabled kids in the 9th grade to take environmental science and I think physics. And so there were fewer kids taking the biology exam, and some of those kids were likely the ones that chose environmental science and physics, which can be challenging courses. And so there's part of our theory is that we don't have equivalent test taking populations, right? So, but we're looking into that further with the department too.
I see, going back to, and you don't have to change the same, but going back to your cohort graphs from the beginning.
Yep.
How the 9th grade cohorts, you had them, either at or below state average in 5th grade, and then growing to be above state average in 9th grade.
Yep.
That would explain the high SGP while the numbers are decreasing over time, because this is a snapshot of 9th grade, 9th and 10th grade, 9th and 10th grade over time. If you were to do a similar cohort with, our current 12th graders and our current, college freshmen,
right,
you'd see a more level above state average, through their time in middle school as well, whereas.
Yeah, and
That's
again, we
how I
could
would-
have
That's how
thrown
I
that.
interpret this. It's
Yeah.
not so much.
You're totally right, Matt. What Matt's saying is that like each of these points is a different group
It's a
of
different cohort.
kids.
Yes.
And that's important for us to recognize. And so, yes, and I don't think adding the 10th grade dot to the cohort analysis is like, it just like gives a false sense of like where the kids are at because it's such a different test.
This SGP score is kind of what I was referring to earlier as a more meaningful metric than compared to state average. Yes, we should compare. It's a good benchmark to look against, but following the individual cohorts and the SGP for each one, and to Carrie's point, each subgroups in those cohorts has more value because what you're showing is that the kids' growth.
Yep.
And who cares about what cohort they're part of?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so that is what I care more about, is that like consistent above the mean growth all the time. And I think it's important that you all know what our proficiency trajectory has been over time. So now if you can switch. So here is a big highlight for the high school, and that is in ELA and math, where you can see the growth. This is SGP now, okay? So it's not proficiency anymore, it's SGP. And I have no idea why this is down here. It doesn't make any sense. It should be like a straight line across. But it's above that 50th percentile median. And it's not only above the 50th percentile, it's above the 50th percentile for students with disabilities too. So this year, I didn't go back and track it all through the last year, but this year. So that's awesome. And here is where I think the high school is hoping to focus, right? So we have a lot of focus on the portrait of a learner. The portrait of a learner is the way that we talk about the development of skills and the skills that we'd like to see every learner in Mendon-Upton be able to take with them as they and grow as they journey through our schools. And you can see that in the standards, there are these places where they are truly skills. Yes, there's some content in the standards too, but I think NITMUC is really focusing on the skills, and that's what we should be focusing on, right? And so in each of the subjects, there are skills that you might say, define and design a problem that involves the development of a process or system with interacting components. You could say that's an inspired innovator, right? And so what the high school is doing, and what I'd like to do with the high school, is help them kind of think about the standards in the space of what they're already doing, right? Like they're already talking about these portrait of a learner competencies. Where in our curriculum do we start to develop them? And can we include those in our curriculum maps so that we can start to see the progressions of these skills and where we think they're developing? And I think if we can do that too, we'll also be able to like have a closer, have a better way of ensuring that the proficiency line remains consistently above the state, because these are all elements that students need to show proficiency on in 10th grade. And I didn't squeeze this onto the slide because I thought it was kind of pretty and didn't want to squeeze anything else on it. But the other thing that I'm hoping to work on with the high school is the development of formative assessments, because unlike the elementary schools and the middle school, it's really hard for high school educators to formatively assess their students consistently and with common assessments, right? So we have iReady and we have kind of models at the elementary and the middle school that we can kind of start with and build on. And I think that it's really important that we start to develop common formative assessments. And this can be totally teacher driven too. It's like, what are those priority areas that we're most interested in focusing on? And what are we all agreeing would be a good way to assess the development, not like the final thing, but like the development over time of these skills so that we're not just relying on the MCAS and to see where we are at with regard to proficiency. So last slide was actions for growth. I've touched on all these through the presentation, but acquiring high quality curriculum resources has already shown improvements both at the elementary level in math with Bridges and with fifth grade ELA. We need to build our common formative assessment systems, especially in including and writing. We're engaging in science curriculum review, which I think is like a really good time and space to do that kind of analysis together and not only identify areas of growth, but also resources that will help our teachers. And so Ryan's got a good group of people together and he's kind of leading this year. And I'll let him share the details of that later this year with you. And then we need to continue to build our muscles and practice the review of subgroup data. And so that means embedding equity pauses into what we're doing consistently and asking ourselves when it's formative assessments, how are all of our kids doing? Not just in the aggregate, but breaking down the subgroups so that we can improve our intervention cycles too. So anyways, I thought that was pretty positive for an accountability and assessment report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions?
So,
I have one.
so many.
You're the only person that can come in sick and then still give a full end-to-end. Yeah.
No, I'm sure I'm not the only person who didn't do that.
I don't
Eric's been over here crunching data.
He's gonna get his badge of nerd done.
Oh, awesome. I should bring them.
All right, since you said it, so by tripping over it today, looking for something else, they're putting all the MCAS data into Power BI now, online, and then allowing you to download the data set. So I downloaded 180,000 rows. But what I tried to do, and I'll show you this, I don't want to share it now because it's not fair to you, but is to say, okay, what are similar, so how, instead of having those gray bars be the state average, how do you take those gray bars to be similar schools? And so I used the 3 attributes of similar amount of low income, similar amount of English language learners, and similar amount of special education. And said, okay, so if you go 5 points one way or the other compared to where we are, and then that gets us down to 47 schools throughout the whole state that have the same demographics as us. And then you could take those MCAS and then compare them against those. So anyways, I was playing a little bit while you were talking, but I'm happy to share this data
I
with you
would
because
love
it's
to see
actually
it.
really interesting.
Yeah, I
So
would love to
think-
see it.
And it's interesting to have, and I know, I mean, we can, and there's more and more we can do this, right? If we dump this in the Power BI, we can have way more fun with it. But I think we always gotta be careful with the state average, right? Because the state is so diverse,
Yes.
right? And you're gonna have the Brocktons to the Fall Rivers to the wherever, versus how do we compare ourselves to like districts, I think is important.
Yeah, that's right.
That being said.
Yeah.
The state average is also a statistical.
It's a benchmark, yeah.
That's right.
It is an average.
And so more
We need that.
consistent because of the diversity and
Exactly.
because of the numbers, the sheer numbers.
We will tend to fool ourselves when we get into the laws of small numbers situations. Where we have a smaller number of people take the class and you can't really assess anything from that.
No, but I think that what you're doing is really, I mean, that is part of creating like a important comparison
Yeah.
metric.
Absolutely.
It's interesting too. I don't know if open architects can give us how they're designing their queries so that we could reproduce them in Power BI if we needed to.
I don't know. I don't, I can ask
Where did
them.
you get all your graphs from?
Some of them I made.
Yeah.
But most of them I'm just like, snipping out of OA. Yeah, and then adding little dotted lines or things that I don't think are missing.
Which
So.
makes everything in Power BI.
Correct. Yeah.
But I've noticed they have new controls now, so I'm not sure we could ever exactly reproduce what they do anymore. So it's but it'd be interesting to look at what they've done. And you'll say, They just sit there and fool, yeah, see
Yeah.
what, you know.
Yeah, and we have regular calls with them to like say, yeah, this is good, but this is what we want, you know? So it'd be cool to think of like what you guys want to see.
Well, it's, yeah. It's not gonna look as nice.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl. Yeah.
Feel better.
Thank you.
All right. All right, moving on. It looks like we're moving the Joe Lake's presentation till next time. So right on to school committee subcommittees. For budget subcommittee, the next scheduled meeting is December 11th to review the initial budget requests. It's going to be a challenging budget year. There are a lot of factors playing a role, like reductions in federal funding, increased fixed costs for healthcare, salaries, replacement of curriculum, as we saw for the high quality HQIM, and replacement of the iPads. Over to Vicky for policy subcommittee updates.
Yeah, so we've been working, as you know, on the new policies for competency determination and graduation requirements, which we bought for first reading last meeting. So these are our current drafts is linked to in here. So and I think we will. So you can take a look at that, and then we will be voting on it at our next meeting.
At the next meeting.
Yeah.
I figured
So,
since it's a bigger kind of policy that we want to just give it enough time and also just have it available here if people had comments in between.
Yep, but we do need to vote on those and submit them to the state by December 31st. So we will be ahead of that deadline.
Yeah.
And then we also have the new policy on access to buildings and grounds and the student fundraising activities. So those are both also linked through for a second reading, and those we would be looking to vote on tonight to approve.
Just a quick look. What is this here? So there's two motions to review and vote on. I'd like to make a motion for.
I'll move to approve the draft policy ECAB, access to buildings and grounds. And the new policy, actually, no, it's a revised policy, JJE, or is that new too?
New.
Approve JJE student fundraising activities.
That is revised. All right, there's a motion to approve ECAB and JJE policies. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vicky.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. No negotiation, superintendent evaluation committee. Karen.
We're not due to meet until the middle of the year.
And planning, that's everything. No matters anticipated by the committee, 8 hours, future agenda item, update and human resources update. With that, motion adjourned. Motion to go by Eric, second. All in favor?
Aye.